Welcome to episode 87 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'm interviewing a man from Colorado who almost lost his life a few years before turning 50, and it caused his life to go in a completely different direction since then. Jason Dennen loved to go skydiving. The excitement of jumping out of a plane and feeling the wind on his face as he floated to Earth created an adrenaline rush that was hard to beat. In June 2018, with 3.5 years of experience behind him, Jason was making one of several jumps that day. Like all the other jumps he had enjoyed before, everything was going smoothly until a gust of wind grabbed his parachute when he was 150 feet off the ground. As soon as he realized he would crash, Jason knew his life was going to change forever. The wind pushed him forward into a wire fence, which quickly gave way. But the metal aircraft hangar building 10 feet behind the fence wasn't so flexible. Jason slammed into the side, traveling about 30 miles per hour. The impact shattered 11 ribs and broke 10 other bones, then shifted the pericardial sac, which held his heart in place, to the right side of his chest. 3 other major organs were also damaged. He survived the trip to the hospital, where Jason spent 8 days in a coma. When he emerged, he was told he might never do many of the things he loved to do again. Yet, on the first anniversary of his accident, Jason ran a triathlon. Today, he continues to work in the financial services industry, but he also does public speaking and wrote a book about his experience. To tell us more about how his life changed and what it means for him as he turns 50 next year, please welcome Jason Dennen to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Jason. I really appreciate your time. You have such an incredible story to share with people about overcoming a great deal of adversity. Why don't you tell my audience what happened to you a few years ago that really changed your life?
Sure. First, thanks for having me on, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a major life-changing day. I woke up that day, went for a trail run. It was a Saturday, so it was a normal day. Then I head over to the airport, and a few years prior to what I'm about to describe is I started as a skydiver. So I had about 3.5 years of experience in skydiving. So it was an ordinary weekend event. It wasn't anything special, any kind of special weekend. And it was the third jump of the day. So I had 2 successful jumps, and I'm coming in for a landing on the third jump of the day, and I'm about 150 feet off the ground. Everything's going as normal, just like I'd landed on that field hundreds of times before. And then as I'm coming in for a landing, suddenly a huge gust of wind hits me from behind and picks me up and slams me forward. So I'm shaken up. And so you're shaking and you get your wits together and say, okay, so from 150 feet, it's about 5 seconds before I'm going to land. I'm looking around and obviously I'm going much faster forward than I was before, because ordinarily you're going between about 20 and 25 miles an hour in forward speed as you're landing. So it hits me from behind. I'm going much faster. And I see the field below me that I landed on hundreds of times before. And behind that's a cattle fence, a wire fence, and 10 feet behind that is a row of airplane hangars, so big metal buildings. So as I'm coming in, and I would have landed far before that fence if I didn't get hit by the wind. But as I get hit by the wind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to land that fence or not. And with 5 seconds to go, when you're about 150 feet off the ground, what you don't want to do is to try to turn. Because when you're under a parachute, when you turn, essentially you pull a handle towards the direction you want to go, and your parachute dives towards the ground, and that creates the turn. And now, if you do that at 2,000 feet and you lose 200 feet, no big deal. If you're at 150 feet and you try to turn, and you lose 200 feet, well, you just hit the ground going highway speed. So we're talking about 40, 50 miles an hour, because it greatly increases your speed when you dive towards the ground. So that is one of the number one reasons why skydivers pass away is something called low turns, because they increase their speed, they hit the ground, they make a mistake. So the first thing that goes through my head is, do not turn. You won't survive a turn if you hit the ground from this with that speed going that you would create by trying to turn. So I just took a deep breath and tried to shake it out and go, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I'm counting down those 5 seconds. And with about a second to go, I was like, there's no way I'm going to land before this fence. I'm carrying way too much speed and I'm going to hit it full force. So I hit this fence and it comes tight around my chest and my abdomen. So I'm closer to the ground at this point, but I'm carrying way too much speed. And it goes tight on my chest because I'm going about 30 miles an hour. And I break it within it just tightens up right away and I feel it break. So it didn't slow me down at all. And then 10 feet behind it is that airplane hangar. And I hit the airplane hangar full force going about 30 miles an hour. So I black out when I hit the airplane hangar. And what happens then is the people in the skydiving company that I go through, they were on the scene within seconds because they're about 100 yards away from where I crashed. And now I found out this months later, but the first thing they come up to me and are trying to see how I am, they see me, broken in a mess. They knew something was horribly wrong and I was having trouble breathing. But they started talking to me and say, "Jason, how are you doing?" And the first thing they said that I said, I was blacked out. I had no idea I said this. I said, "Don't call anyone. I'll be okay. Just give me a minute." And I think my body just went into really fight or flight mode where it was, it's almost like when you fall down and if you get up right away, you're like, everything's okay. Nothing's broken. And I think that's how my mind worked at that point. It was in default mode. And so there was no way I was getting up with all the injuries I had. But it was my mind went into fight or flight mode to you're fighting for your life right now. They called the ambulance and 911. A helicopter came and picked me up, Flight for Life helicopter, and brought me 50 miles away to the nearest level 1 trauma center that takes care of kind of the worst accidents. And yeah, from there, the journey goes on, but I go into a coma and I hit so hard on the left side. The big injury was, so I hit on the left side, 10 of my 12 ribs break on the left side, impact my heart. And my heart shoots out of what normally sits called the pericardial sac. It breaks out of that sac, ends up on the right side of my chest, is twisted up. So that's what almost killed me. But besides that, 20 broken bones, 3 other organs that they had to fix.
That's incredible. So you were not okay when you...
I was going to be okay for a long time after hitting that. But yeah, I guess I went into default mode. I didn't have to think about it. I programmed myself over years of doing things like climbing, triathlon, that, something you might not be in a good place. You're in an accident, you're in a bad storm, you're in a near death experience type of situation where if you make a mistake, you might die, that you go into the mode of, I'm going to survive. I'm going to figure out how to get through this. And that's where my body went and my mind went when I went into the accident. Even though I really was blacked out and couldn't think for myself, it was just the body went to reaction mode.
That's an incredible story. Was that wind shear that caused that problem, that sudden gust?
Yeah, it was huge gusts all the mountains, and it happens sometimes. So where the skydiving school is, it's really close to basically the beginning of the mountains. When you see in the United States where the mountains start, that's where it starts. You'll get crazy winds all the time off of those mountains. So there'll be times when you're landing and the wind will switch multiple times. So you're always trying to land into the wind because it slows you down and gives you a softer landing. There are times, normally it's almost like a normal day where all of a sudden it'll just start spinning because you have this arrow that you follow, which tells you which is where to go into the wind. And you'll see it just spinning in circles. And you're looking like, all right, I'm not sure which way I'm going to have to land. And you have to figure that out. And sometimes you land into the wind, sometimes it's a crosswind, and you have to just deal with the situation you're going into. But so it's not uncommon in Colorado in the Front Range, right along those mountains, that we have crazy wind gusts all the time.
That's still incredible. I mean, I'm a former emergency medical technician, and to know that you had broken, 10 of your ribs? 10 of your 12 ribs?
11. So 10 on the left side and then 1 on the right side broke as well. Yeah. Thanks for doing what you do, because if it's not somebody like you that's coming on the scene, I wouldn't have lived. Because one of the things that the doctor said was that everyone played their role during that rescue, from the people that showed up on 911 that came on the scene, to the helicopter pilots that brought me there, to the doctor. And they said, if anyone had to move me in an awkward way, my heart could have disconnected and I would have died instantly. Because one of the things the doctor said was that we don't ever see someone come in with an injury like you with your heart, because when your heart moves all the way across your chest, generally it disconnects and it's fatal, and you don't make it from the accident scene. Because I guess the same kind of accidents happen with car accidents and things like that. It's just blunt force trauma to the chest. So the doctor couldn't figure out how I made it off the field or through the helicopter to make it to him alive. And what the doctor said is not only he had never done that surgery before, no doctor in that hospital had ever done that surgery before because they've never seen anybody come in alive with it. So it gives you a pause where, you know, when you're the accident victim, you have nothing to compare it to, because it's just, you've never been through this before. When the doctor or the cardiologist or the cardiothoracic surgeon says, well, you shouldn't be alive and we can't figure out how it is, that's when it really sinks in as how serious it is, because like this guy sees these kind of accidents all the time, especially in Colorado where you have, all kinds of adventures and extreme sports and things like that, where they see all kinds of accidents. When they say, you're like, it really sinks in. You're like, wow, how lucky you are to really be alive.
That's incredible, because you think of the major blood vessels going into the heart alone. They're only a couple of inches wide usually, or long. And it went all the way across your chest into a different cavity. And just incredible that you were able to survive that. Were you married
Yeah.
at the time?
No, luckily that person would, if I was married, they would have been horrified by what happened. So no, I wasn't married at the time. But yeah, someone was looking out for me. The good Lord above looking down at me, and then had something for me to do more than I was doing at that point. So he saved me and let me live on to do other things and his work.
Because it was
really
so
lucky.
unusual, were you written up in medical journals as a result?
They said to my parents that the doctor was going to write it in some medical journal or something. I never followed up on that, because I've been through normal surgeries before, post-accident, where you go to the doctor, you know what's about to happen. You could ask questions. You know what the recovery period is, and you wake up after the surgery and you're really with it. In a situation like this, and these were my first surgeries when I went into this accident, there's no asking questions. I was blacked out on the surgery table or the operating room. And when you wake up, I saw the cardiothoracic surgeon, I think once after I woke up from the coma. He made sure I was okay. And could he have been there back and forth when I was out of it? He certainly could have been. But you don't really have conversations that are coherent conversations with these doctors, because when you're waking up out of this coma that they put me in for 8 days, at first, there were times of the day where I was completely with it. And then there was times of the day where I couldn't, I was completely out of it, because my family would come in the next day and I described something that happened. I said, did that really happen? Or was I hallucinating that? And they would have to clear it up for me. And that lasted for a couple of weeks. So you really can't, you're just being and trying to hang on at that point when you wake up from that coma. So there's not really a deeper thought process of asking these deeper questions of what's going to happen. Or I was happy to be alive. I wasn't really think of his medical journals or any of that.
In addition to problems with your heart chest cavity, I would have imagined you had a heck of a concussion as a result of that too.
I did have a concussion. I think what happened was when the main part was when I hit my ribs, and then I probably had where almost like a football injury where they had whiplashes against the ground when someone gets tackled. And I think that's probably what happened, because if I hit head first, I think I would have had much worse head injury. So they did say I had a concussion, but I guess no worse than, any kind of football concussion I may have previously had. And by the time I woke up, I really didn't notice it. I was also on a ton of medication. I didn't remember headaches or anything like that. Could I have had one? I guess certainly, but yeah, no permanent death. That's one thing when I woke up that my family said, they already knew. They said, you don't have any permanent brain injury of any type you had a concussion, which is a brain injury of some sort, and you don't have spinal damage. So pretty early on, they said that to me. So they knew that before I even came out of the coma. I think they probably had to say that to me 4 or 5 times, because it slipped my mind with when I woke up and whatever I was on medication wise. But yeah, they couldn't figure that either. How I didn't have any spine damage or spinal damage when I hit that. They said, that's
another miracle.
We can't imagine you not having it. Yeah, absolutely.
How did you get attracted, or what attracted you to skydiving in the first place?
Yeah. The challenge. I think a lot of things that I do start with a question of, you see someone doing something that, could have been triathlon, and also with climbing mountains and skydiving, is that you see something and you wonder if you have the ability to do that, because there's a huge difference between someone saying, yeah, I'll go skydiving and I can do that, and actually executing it. Because, when you're going, flying towards Earth or falling towards Earth, there's a lot of things you have to do in that process to safely get to Earth. Deploy your parachute, fly the parachute, make sure you're not doing anything that's going to cause, massive injuries. So it's a question. I saw it and I would take my bike, I would ride past the airport. I'd been doing it for years. And then finally I was looking out one day, you'd see the parachutes in the air. I was like, I wonder if I could do that. And it was a question. I was like, do I think I can do that? And I wanted to put myself to the test to see if I could. I also used it as a bit of avoidance as well, because at the time when I got into skydiving, I was working a ton of hours and I got a promotion, and little did I know it was going to turn into 12 to 14 hours days. And I wasn't really happy at the time because I was just like a ball of stress. And you would think skydiving is the wrong answer because it's going to create more stress. And at first it did. When you were training for skydiving, I was scared to death. It's, I think, the one misconception people have about skydivers. You're not scared, and that allows you to do that. I'm like, no, I was so scared every time when I was going up there. And it takes a long time to get over that because it becomes your new normal. So at first, I was just like, maybe this is the wrong thing to pick. If I was going to jump on Saturday in the training period, on Thursday, my palms would start to sweat. And they would just wouldn't stop until after the skydive and I was safely on the ground. So yeah, it was a bit of avoidance because one of the things with skydiving, I would say when you're at the airport, the only thing exists is the skydiving you're doing. So it takes you out of whatever you're going through. There's no past, there's no future, because if you don't land this, there is no future. And it allowed me to escape that pressure-packed situation at work while you're doing it. So I'm not saying that's the most healthy thing, avoidance, but it got me through quite a time. But yeah, because you're really just in the moment. And I think that's the beauty of skydiving and other things as well, that you're not worrying about anything but right now and living the present. Because I think a lot of times we don't live in the present enough. It's like an example of when you see two people in a room or at a restaurant where they're on their phones and not talking to each other, and you're like, you're not really there. You're in your own world, even though two people are at the same table at a restaurant. It always seems odd to me. You can't live like that all the time in the moment, but I think that's something that translates into normal everyday life that I think is a lesson you need to do. Be present in your communications with people. How many times are you talking to someone else and you're thinking about three other things and not, having someone repeat something 3 or 4 times because you really weren't paying attention, even though you're in the room with them. So, and I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that sometimes, but I think it turns you into, be present in what you're doing with that person. Make that person feel like you want to talk to them and you're paying attention to what you're talking to them. So yeah, being the present is, I think, one of the lessons from skydiving I learned for sure.
One of the greatest tragedies today, I think, is to go to a restaurant and see a family sitting around a table, each person on their own cell phone, doing their own thing without taking the opportunity to get to know each other and to just share stories. It is sad. So it's nice that you had developed that awareness of being in the presence through skydiving, or did you always have it?
I think in some aspects of life I did, and in other aspects of life maybe less. And I think after the accident, I, took note of that I needed to be better about that. So I think things that I choose to endeavors whether it was mountain climbing or triathlon, things like that, are very in the moment things. And I didn't realize for a long time that I was picking things that you had to be very in the moment and present to participate in these activities. And after a while, I was like, why did I pick all these things when I'm thinking of it? You're all in the moment in all these things. You didn't realize when you're picking it, that's what it was, but that's what it really is that attracts you to it. And, after the accident, I said, you do a whole life assessment of, how can you be better? What are the things that are missing in life? And one of the things I was like, sometimes I'll be there at work or something like that, and I'm not giving the person who's sitting right next to me talking the full attention that they deserve when they're talking to me, because I'm so stressed out, I'm thinking of 50 other things. And so I was like, you have to get better at shutting out those other things and being with that person that you're with, who's speaking to you, and not getting yourself pulled in all these other directions. So I think it's certainly something that you have to create it and make a habit out of it. That it's like, how do you do it? You do it once and then you do it twice and you keep on doing it. And when your mind goes and gets tugged in these directions, go back to where you're supposed to be and block that out. So I think that's one of the things I certainly got better at in other aspects of my life, outside of skydiving and outside of those other activities. So I think I did a better job of moving it into other aspects of my life for sure.
I know women do skydiving as well, but for men, it is typically what you said. Do I have what it takes to jump out of an airplane? It's got to be that mental thing where you're testing yourself. And do you regret doing that for skydiving?
No, I don't.
No, I wouldn't.
So I think everyone has their own opinion. That's completely fine. Some people say that's just a waste of time jumping out of the plane. You're putting yourself at undue risk. And what do you get out of it? You're getting these little thrills, and is it really worth it? And what my answer to that is, you don't understand. You're looking from the outside as someone who's never went skydiving before and doesn't understand. It's really not about that little thrill, because if it's a little about that adrenaline rush, which at first is super high, you're like, I'm shaking from the adrenaline rush. But at that, little by little, that goes away. Not completely, but it's nowhere near the first 10 or 12 jumps. So if you were just in it for that adrenaline rush, you would stop after 12 jumps because you're like, I'm not getting that high that I was before. It's really much different. It's like the places you go in your mind from jumping out of that airplane to landing on that plane is what it's all about. Because it's much more of a challenge, because also I think people think you just follow the airplane and you pull your parachute and you land. No, there's a lot more to it. There's, just as far as skill wise, there's lots of skills. You could fly belly down, you could fly feet down, head down. You could do wingsuiting, which people see all the time and are super familiar with. So those are skills you learn. There's bonds you have with other people because there's lots of people you skydive with that you may have never come across in life, or are from a completely different way of thinking, political background, everything that you jump with, and you're like best friends when you're jumping with them, and you have incredible bonds with these people that you're jumping with. And there's also tons of lessons to be learned with skydiving that really translates to other parts of your life that has nothing to do with skydiving. Being calm in stressful situations and making decisions, because one of the worst ways to make decisions when you're hijacked emotionally, because you make an emotional decision, and that's not the best way to make a decision generally. So making decisions like that, learning how to make decisions, because you could be emotionally charged. When's the first time your parachute fails and you have to get rid of that and pull your reserve parachute? If you freak out, you're going to hit the ground and you're not going to live. And can you hold it together and not get emotionally hijacked with that freaked out situation? Go, I need to do the things that I need to do to save my life right now. And I could deal with that emotion later. But if I deal with the emotion now, or you have the never say die attitude when you're coming towards the ground and something bad's happened with your malfunction in the parachute, and freaking out's not fixing it. Staying calm and going, I am not going to stop trying to fix this until I touch down to the ground, because I want to save my life, because that's happened before too, outside of this accident, and when you had malfunctions with your parachute.
You sure do have to think quickly on your feet or in the air at the split second to make some of those decisions. I've also talked to skydivers who love to do it just because it's so peaceful out there. When you get up, how high are you typically when you're jumping out of the plane?
Typically 12,500 feet above the ground. Yeah, one of the most freeing feelings, or at least for me, one of my favorite parts, is when you first exit the aircraft and you jump out of the plane, and it's just like, it is the most freeing feeling you can feel. It's just like you don't have a worry in the world. It feels amazing. So yeah, that's something that's absolutely true. It's amazing. Or when you're in a wingsuit, when you have this, people are using the squirrel suit where they have wings underneath their arms and their legs, and when you jump out and then you open up your wings and start flying in a forward speed, it's not exactly like being a bird, but probably as close as we can get. And when you're flying in forward motion, to feel that, and you're seeing the ground coming below you and you're flying in a forward speed, it's hard to beat. Yeah, but on top of that, there's a responsibility that goes with it. It's not just you don't do whatever you want, because or not paying attention to what's going on, because you have other people flying with you. So you're dealing with other people's safety, because if you do something that you shouldn't do, you could hurt someone else inadvertently. So yeah.
Attention to detail would also apply, because you're packing your own chute as a general rule, right?
Yeah. As you get more experience, generally you're packing your own parachute. And I think the learning process is you just humbling yourself, because I've been to classes, or the class that I had when you started skydiving, and there was 3 of us, and I was the only one that actually wound up getting my skydiving license. But I noticed this, one of the fellows that I jumped with, he was in I know everything, and he wasn't a skydiver. And it's like people sometimes that are successful in other parts of their lives come into skydiving or anything else and think, I'm going to be automatically successful in this just because I was successful in another part of my life. It's no, you need to humble yourself and realize you don't know anything. And the instructors are there to teach you how to save your life, and you better listen. And I noticed the people that didn't want to listen or thought they knew it all going in, even though they didn't know anything, were the people that didn't get through the training class or didn't get too far and they quit because they didn't like the hit to their ego that all of a sudden they're important somewhere else, but no one cares about that you're important in business and all of a sudden you're skydiving. You're nobody here.
Exactly.
You're here to listen and learn. And I think that's a huge lesson when I looked upon everyone. And because I was never afraid to admit, I was like, I'm scared. And I was like, the first time for the first 20, or however many it lasted, it was like, yeah, it's scary. And I'm not ashamed to admit I'm scared right now. And asking questions of people, going, ask the experts. They'll help you through it. It's incredibly helpful, especially to the new people, and they want to make sure they're safe as well, even if they're not an instructor. So I think humbling yourself when you're learning something new was a huge lesson as well.
What do you do for a career?
I work in the financial industry, so 401ks, retirement plans for big institutional customers.
Okay, so a desk job. So being out in the open air of a skydive would be a treat for you.
Oh, for sure. It's and I'm an outdoors person in general. I've climbed lots over the years, hiked, backpacked, ice climb, rock climbs, mountains, triathlon, all those things. So I really do enjoy the outside. So I'm racing to get outside after work, especially when the weather's nice.
A lot of people have had close calls with their life. I'm sure of that in different situations. But you have a daily reminder with the scars. So you are getting ready in the morning and you're looking at those scars, and what message does that convey to you?
Yeah. When I was going into the accident, like I said before, I was working crazy hours, like 60, 70 hours a week. And I felt like I lost purpose in life. It's every day I was working and I was like, how am I going to get through this next day? I'm so stressed out. I could never make it through a night of sleep. I was like staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., can't go back to sleep. And like, how am I going to get through the next day of all these things I need to go through? And the financial industry can be pretty stressful. And I'm thinking, I'm just like, man, I'm miserable. I'm doing the skydiving because it at least gets me away from that and makes me not think about that for a while. But like I said, I lost purpose. I had a long list of things I wanted to do, like volunteer, and I never got to any of it because I'm working all these hours. I'm just trying to get through the day. And so when I get into the accident, I'm just like, I feel like I've lost purpose in life. There's more for me to do in this life than I'm doing now. And, I'm trying to figure this out at the time of the accident. Most people don't intentionally make decisions that get them away from the things that are most important to their lives. Like, yeah, if you ask somebody what's the most important in your life, family and friends and things like that, you get into a career, all of a sudden you get pulled into all these different directions. And it's like you make all these thousands of decisions that you don't realize what the weight of them are at the time, because it's not one decision that's going to take you away from the things that are most important, but it's 1,000 decisions that slowly take you away from what's most important. And so that happened to me. And when I wake up from the coma, the first thing you're thinking of is like, I didn't spend enough time with my family and friends. Like when people ask me, like, what do you think of? And what goes through your mind? It's like the most important people are the things that you say are most important. You better take care of, because if you don't, those are the things you'll be regretting. And luckily I got a second chance at life to be able to correct some of those things where I was taken away from, where I made decisions unknowingly to get away from the things that are most important with family and friends. And some people don't get that second chance. And maybe they're near end of life and maybe they're, I've realized I have lived the last 60 years incorrectly and I can't do anything. It was recently, Steve Jobs, I think he died of liver cancer, 7 or 8 years ago or whatever it was. But someone posted something that said he's on his deathbed from cancer. There's no recovery at this point. And he says, all these billions of dollars don't mean anything because I don't have a relationship with my daughter. I don't have a relationship with my daughter's mother. And it's too late. I can't fix any of that. And that's really sad.
It is. That's regret.
And something you can't fix. And some of my message to other people is like, I lived through it. I know what you regret the most. I don't want you to be in that situation because you might not be able to fix it. I was lucky enough to be able to fix it. And that's one of my messages. But yeah, every day. So there's always going to be situations in your life when you're tugged in different directions, right? And when I say the scar, when I get dressed every morning, so the scar goes from my clavicle all the way to below my belly button, where they cut me open and sawed my sternum and had to put it back. And I had 3 other organs besides the heart that they fixed. So that's a scar that's never going to go away, but I'm glad it's never going to go away because I look at that and go, you have a greater purpose in life. You got saved by a miracle, and you need to do something with this every day. So it's a constant reminder, because you're still going to get pulled in other directions. Because it's like you come up with this grand plan when I'm laying in the hospital, not being able to move, going like, you need to be better about this. But I knew at some point I was going to go back to a job because I'm not independently wealthy, and I'm going to have to put a roof over my head and food. And you're going to get pulled in different directions. For the real test is not having this grand plan that can't fail. It's going, you're going to get pulled in different directions. You have to be prepared for that. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to still get pulled in direction. But that scar, when I look in the morning, goes, okay, you got pulled off direction yesterday, or maybe you got pulled off in a wrong direction for a week. Come back. You remember what it feels like when you woke up from that coma and regretted wishing you spent more time with your family. You don't ever want to have that again. You got brought back for a greater purpose, and you need to fulfill that purpose. Because part of the purpose, besides spending more time with family, is like when you go through this situation of this, near death. And one of the things on my list that I wanted to do was volunteer at a hospital, but I was like, I don't have any kind of skills. And this is before the accident. So after the accident, I go, I oddly have this weird set of skills of going through this, and maybe I have something to give back to somebody else going through a hard time. It doesn't necessarily need to be the hospital. Other people are struggling in many different ways. Maybe lost the life of someone they love. It could be a physical car accident or something like that. And what could I give back to somebody? And there's no way I could have understood how it would be to go through the toughest thing in your own life unless I went through that myself. When I'm in the hospital, people would ask me about the accident all the time. So I must have told it like 50 times in the first couple of weeks of waking up. And at first I was like, maybe they're just checking my mental state and if I can remember what happened. Because as soon as, I swear to you, like within a day, someone asked me like, well, what happened? And I told them exactly what happened. And after a couple of times, like, I don't think they're asking me because they're seeing if I have the mental recall. But every time I would tell the story, at first it weighed heavily on me because I was going PTSD, because you're laying in this bed. I can't move for 3 months. I'm basically immobilized laying in a bed. You're thinking of, there's not a lot of distractions besides the pain, and you're trying to reinvent yourself, become back better than you were before. You're thinking of the accident while you're laying there, so you're reliving it over and over again. And so felt like for a while like a burden. And then one night everything changed, and I started thinking about the story, and I go, this is not a burden. There was a gift given to me, because I realized every time I told the story, I stopped thinking about how it made me feel. I started thinking about how the way the person I told the story reacted, because I would say, tell them what happened. And I go, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure if I'm strong enough to come back from this. So I was confessing my doubts, and they would start sharing something about their own lives. And I'm just like, there's no way they would have shared about their life unless I was willing to be vulnerable and tell them exactly what happened to me and the doubts that I'm having. And I started thinking, I was like, that's something that I would have had unless this happened. I started thinking about it as a gift. I was like, you need to use this in some way to help somebody else. And then, it develops from there. But that was the first signs of what the power of the story, and how that can help you help other people.
What did you do with the second chance of life? Is there any specific purpose that you embraced besides sharing your story?
Yeah, it's helping other people getting through those tough times. I think people oftentimes don't give themselves the full credit of how strong they are. It's easy to say that person has strength that I don't have when you're going through a tough time. Or you see something that's someone who's successful at something, and it's easy to say they have skills that I don't have. When in reality, that's not true. You're just not giving yourself the credit for that. And one of the messages is that you are stronger than you think, and you can get through things. I think one of the things really is breaking down and sharing my story. But my story, it's not about, well, I would say my story is not about skydiving or about eventually when I race the triathlon again. It's really about something unexpected happens to you, and how do you get through that tough situation? And that's really the transferable thing when I talk to people about them going through that tough time when they're in it. I think one of the things that, at least for me, that happened was when you're laying in the bed and I'm all broken, it's so overwhelming that you're going through, and it seems so difficult. You're like, how do I even start? And there came a day where I said, you can't fix this in one day. That's not possible because I'm laying there going, oh, I'm just going to get up and walk one day. And that was probably the medication talking. But I was just like, just find something small to do today. And then tomorrow find something small to do. Because at this point I'm laying in bed and all I could move is my right wrist, which to feed myself. And that's really it. I can't move. And I was like, stop feeling sorry for yourself because that's not going to make you any better. And one of the things is really following or falling back on your foundation that you built. Because all those things that I did, racing triathlons, climbing mountains, all those things were 100% transferable to coming back from this accident. It wasn't the same, but the mindset was exactly the same. Because when you go into a race, you pick a race maybe 10 months in the future. And on day one, you're not anywhere close to getting in race condition to finish that race. But it's every day you do something. And then all of a sudden, you little by little, and sometimes it's so small, the gain you make every day, you can't even notice it. But then, after 10 months, you're so much further along. So I took that same mindset when I was coming back from the accident. I was like, it's just like racing. And when I was laying in bed, my dad said that. He goes, this is going to be just like one of your races. And I didn't even understand it at the time because that was like within an hour of me waking up from the coma. But it stayed with me. And I was like, oh, he just means you have to do something every day. And just like training for your races over all those years. And you don't know exactly where you're going to get, but you have a plan put together to overcome this.
So you were,
and a lot of times, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You were running races before the accident. Is that correct?
Yeah. I had done, I don't know, 50 or so triathlons and endurance runs and climbing mountains, which is similar in some ways as far as testing your endurance. So yeah, I had the mindset already instilled, and that's what I call the foundation of. I didn't magically just come up with how do you get through this. And one of the things I say to other people as far as when they're going through that tough time, or they're trying to, or they say, I don't think I have that foundation built when something comes. So well, what do you do? So choose something you might not like, or that you don't think that you're going to have a hard time doing, and pick it and just see it through. So if you're not a runner and you hate running, just pick a 5K, right? 3.1 miles. You don't have to be the world's best runner, but just do it because you overcame something you had never done before. You're not going to feel comfortable. You're not going to exactly what to do on day one. You're not going to know how to feel. And that's all about all these challenges you go through. It's not comfortable, and it never is going to be. Mm-hmm. But that's when when you're pressing yourself to improve on who you are. It's going to be uncomfortable, and it's working through it. You might have fear but I was like, fear is two things. Fear can either hold you back from doing something that you are capable of, or it's there to protect you. And sometimes it's hard to figure out which one of those two things is. Like jumping out of a plane. Is that fear that's protecting me and this is a bad idea, I shouldn't be jumping out of this plane? Or is that the fear holding me back saying, I'm capable of this, but I'm too scared to overcome it? And then that's the uncomfortable feeling you have to come through. And when you do that enough times and then you take on a new challenge, you understand what it's going to feel like of not being comfortable or not being confident and going, I'm not sure that I'm going to get to my end goal, but that's the turn on of going through a new thing. It's you don't know what the end is. You don't know if you're capable of it. And that was the whole going through the comeback of coming back from being injured. It's like they told me I wasn't going to run again. They told me that I couldn't do all these things. They're like tempering my expectations. And I said, they're not invested in what I'm doing, meaning it's so easy for someone else to say words that don't affect them and say, put limits on you. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I said is, I'm not going to allow them to limit me or my mindset. I'll figure out where the end point is. If I don't give it 100% in my recovery for years, and I've been doing it for years, it's like, I'm never going to find what the end part is, what the failure place is. But if I let them defeat me or give failure a voice now, I'll never get close to where I want to be. And I was like, I'll determine what my limits are, and I'm going to find them. And I might not be happy. It might not be exactly where I want to be, but I'll find them. I'm not going to allow someone else to control me. So I think that's a lot of people doubted me or doubted people in everyday life. It's like they throw words around like it's, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do that. And it's based on what? Because they do thousands of surgeries. There's the top 1% of recovery, the low 1% of recovery. And there's the most people in the middle. Looking at, a doctor spends 5 minutes with you 3 times and they think they can figure out what you're capable of doing. And I was like, I'm not going to listen to that.
There's so many people over 50 who have that same problem. They are told what their limitations are, especially you're too old to do that kind of thing. And many people accept that and live a life of regret. Other people say, no, here, watch me. I'm going to do it. Or I'm going to fail while I do it, but at least I'm going to know that I couldn't do it rather than have somebody tell me I could.
Yeah. Doctors are amazing, but they don't know everything 100%. I think, or at least, growing up, you have this certain esteem and for doctors, which they're incredible people. I know plenty of doctors, and they saved my life, but their prediction of what is possible is not necessarily accurate. If they tell you you're not going to walk and you decide not to try to walk again, you know what? They are 100% accurate, but not because you let them tell you what your prognosis was going to be. And, you have to figure that out for yourself. Mindset is so much more than your physically what you're capable of, meaning your mind will lead you to where you can get to. It's more mental than physical. You can will yourself to do things that people didn't think were possible, but you have to get there mentally. When I was in my worst state, I said, I only can move my hand, but if I get my mind in the right place, it'll lead the rest of my body when I am healed enough to start putting weight on my legs or having the casts off my arm or anything else. And that was 100% true. It was a mentality and how you train your mind to get through the day. So having a strong will is 100% important in building that up.
I'm sure that this whole experience was one of the most expensive things you've done in your life, recovering from the hospital. And a lot of people are overcome with these massive medical bills when they experience anything like that. It might be a stroke or a heart attack or whatever the case might be. Were you impacted by that at all?
One thing I always say is you don't know how good your insurance is until you actually need it, and it's too late at that point. I was extremely lucky that my insurance covered a ton, and you go through weird situations with the insurance because when you're in the hospital that long, they never let you feel comfortable. You're always on edge that they're going to kick you out of the hospital. And I was in 4 different hospitals. So you're laying there and all of a sudden it's one day you're staying there and all of a sudden you hear a rumor of, oh, they need to move you to the next hospital. You're like, when's that going to be? Like, oh, within 24 hours. Like, what do you mean 20? I didn't know where I'm going. And then, when I was in the last hospital, the rehab hospital, they would the therapists, because they honestly didn't know when you were going to get discharged, and they are beholden to the insurance company approving you every single week. They would say, we don't know if you're going to be here for a week or 5 weeks or what it's going to be. So there is stress involved because you're like, I'm trying to fix my body, but I have no control over the insurance and what decisions they're going to make, which it adds stress that doesn't need to be added. The one thing I learned along the way because I would build great relationships with all the people in the hospital, and they would tell me things. Like one of the things they said in the last hospital I'm doing this therapy, they say, you need to, this is how you stay in the hospital. You show progress every single week and they're more likely to approve you. Not definitely, but more likely to approve you. And in my mind, I want to progress anyway, but I'm like, okay, my job is to progress every week because that's what I can control. I can't control the insurance company's decision to keep me an extra week or not, but I can control getting better every day. And that's the way I looked at it. Control what you can control. Everything else, it's whatever's going to happen, it's beyond your control. So you want to try to keep that as not that stress in your life because you're already stressed out. But the insurance company, in terms of battling them to pay things, was I spent months every Friday for 4 hours. I would be on the phone with the doctor, or well, not doctor's offices, the insurance company, because it's a mess how things get paid or don't get paid. And there were times in the hospital on the calls with the insurance companies, I'm like, you're supposed to pay this. I know this is a problem because you're not paying it. I was just like, believe me, I'm more stubborn than you are. You're paying this. And I'll keep calling you every single day until you pay it. Because what they're really wanting you to do is you to give up and pay it yourself when you don't need to be paying these bills that you're supposed to be covered on. So it could be, and there are definitely times in the hospital where you're thinking to yourself, how much is this going to be on me? And am I ever going to be able to pay this off? And you don't know, and they won't tell you. And I think they designed it like that. But I was extremely lucky that the insurance company was good at paying the bills. It took battles. It took what it took.
What's on your bucket list going forward?
That's ever evolving. It's, it's looking at new challenges. One of the things, just Friday, my motorcycle got delivered. So it's, when I go back to mindset, I got that from a couple people, like, why are you doing this? Isn't this like, you've already gotten hurt in the skydiving accident? I'm like, one of the things that my nurses said in the last hospital I was in. So he had broken his back in a snowboarding accident years before. So he could identify with what I was going through because he had been through a major injury. He was like 4 months with being immobilized. And so we would talk each day. And he said to me one day, he said, "You're still young." And this happened when I was in my 40s. So I was 42 at the time, turned 43 in the hospital. And he said, "Don't stop taking chances. You're not going to be happy if you do that. You have to continue to live your life. You can't let this accident determine the rest of your life in a negative way." And that really sat with me because at first you are a little bit gun shy. I definitely had post traumatic stress. I remember I would walk across the street with my crutches after I got out of the hospital. I was doing rehab, and you would hear a noise, a car noise. Not that they were going to hit you, but you would hear it out of the back of your mind, and the first thing you feel like this car is going to come and hit me, and I'm going to be right back in the hospital where I just battled 3.5 months to get out of. Or when I first started riding my bike. Riding your bike in Colorado could be pretty dangerous. We have a lot of cyclists. You ride when cars pass within 2 or 3 feet of you all the time and get used to that. But at first, when I was riding my bike, I would hear the car from behind, and you would like freaking out a little because you're thinking like that car's going to hit me and it could put me back in the hospital and ruin everything that just got fixed. So you had to get used to that. And as time went on, and I started climbing mountains again, and they said I was never going to do that. And there's risk in that. You're a sheet of ice for thousands of feet, and you start at midnight, and it's completely dark, and you can't even see the summit. And I had done that before the accident, but I was like, let me see if I can do this again. And that's a whole mental challenge to go, my body doesn't work quite as well as it did before. Can my mind also adapt to dealing with risk again? And so that the mental, I would say, was even harder than the physical part of climbing mountains again. But yeah, the motorcycle thing was like, you know what else is next? And it came up the same thing as skydiving in terms of, I'm not sure I can do this. It's a little bit scary. And you think back of that foundation you built. You're like, you're going to feel unsure of yourself. That's part of it. You're going to have to practice and humble yourself. That's a part of it, because you're not going to just go out on the motorcycle and be haphazard. And I'm not looking to get injured for sure, but it's the same kind of mindset where you're in the moment. That's the same as skydiving. Motorcycle, you're in the moment. You have to be aware of everything else that's going around you, but it's a journey, and it's going to include, traveling to beautiful places on the motorcycle. So it's a different way of exploring from a physical aspect. It's also mentally exploring what you're capable of. And I don't mean going 150 miles an hour. I have really no interest in going 150 miles an hour, but just in terms of seeing beautiful things, and you're in a meditative state as well in some ways. You got to be paying attention, but similar to running as well, where things are going through your mind at the same time when you're in a relaxed state. So it's always finding a new challenge, because I guess I don't know how to live without having some sort of challenge that you're building towards and training towards. I think that's just an important part of life for me, at least.
A lot of people have skydiving on their bucket list. Will you go skydiving again?
Early on, and before I even could get out of the bed, my mom came up to me and she said, "Can you promise me one thing?" I was like, "Oh, this is going to be something weighty if she's going to, I can't even move yet." And she just said, "Can you promise me you're not going to skydive again?" And the reality of being in that bed, besides rebuilding myself, there was a tremendous amount of guilt. Not anybody else placed it on me except myself. My parents and my family never said, "We wish you didn't skydive," and didn't blame me for anything. But I felt horrible because I'm like, I can't imagine what it must have felt like when they got the call saying your son might not live, or when they saw me in the coma. And I said, okay, I can't imagine what they would feel like if they knew I was skydiving on a Saturday after what had already happened. So it's like, you know what, there's lots of other things to do in life, lots of other things to learn. Maybe I learned exactly what I needed from skydiving, because it also helped me survive all those skills, the accident and everything else. And it helps me in everyday life all the time, the things I've learned from there. I was like, there's other things I need to do. It wasn't my job. It wasn't the way I made income. So there was no reason I had to go back. So I promised I wouldn't go, so I haven't skydived. Do I hear the plane going overhead sometimes and wonder, oh, everyone's jumping out of the plane is fun? Sometimes I do. As far as the farther you get away from it, the easier that gets.
Would you encourage others to do it?
Oh, 100%.
Good. That's
I would say there's 3.2 million skydives a year, and there's about 20 to 25 people that die.
when you came to.
And
Go ahead.
so I was just saying, and there, a lot of those people are people who are jumping 300 or 400 times. So if you're just going once and you're attached to an instructor, the chances of you getting hurt is pretty low. Could you get injured? Oh, 100, you could, but it's more about skydiving is not about skydiving. It's about overcoming mental hurdles. Sometimes the hardest thing is calling up and saying, I'm reserving my spot on Saturday. And for someone who's never skydived before, and giving them your credit card and saying, all right, I'm going to do it. It could help you in other parts of your life that you had no idea would help.
You had a near-death experience. Did that impact your faith at all or bring you any closer to God?
I grew up in the church and I was been a Christian all my life. I think the things as far as what people think the coma is, my mind was active the whole time. It wasn't like darkness and nothing occurred. For me, it was constant nightmares that would come up. And they were all similar in that people were with me, they're unwilling to help me, and they were leaving me for dead. And I had to decide whether I wanted to live or not. And what came along with that is the guiding light was faith. And as far as like, these were temptations, the way I saw them, to allow yourself, because the easy way is to give up. No one would have known I was giving up. And the easy way is you don't have to deal with the pain. You don't have to see what's on the other side because it was unknown. Like I said, I blacked out when I hit that building. So I had no idea what was wrong with me as I'm battling through this coma. So, was I going to be paralyzed? Was there going to be permanent brain damage? Was I ever going to be anywhere close to where I was before from a physical or mental standpoint was unknown. So I had to make that decision without knowing what the consequences were of this. And really, when I say those nightmares were temptation, it's like temptation to quit and take the easy way out. And I always say, you're not going to be tempted beyond what you can bear, and there'd be a way out. And that says in the Bible. And the trials or difficult things you live through tend to sometimes become the best thing that ever happened to you, but they're also there to test your faith and develop your perseverance. I was guided the whole way by lessons I had learned way before that accident ever happened. And sometimes things you thought you've forgotten you hadn't forgotten, they became a part of you. So it was it tests your faith and you become stronger because of it. It's like when you believe in something, right? You have blind belief, but then when you get shown that all these things you had learned are 100% true, and go out and then tell other people about it. So I think that becomes a big purpose in your life is have faith in God, and that's what got me through it. Besides the miracle that God had to save my life, and saying, hey, there's more I want you to do on earth, and you're gonna figure this out. You asked me to give you purpose again, and you have to trust the whole process as God has a plan in your life. You don't necessarily know what the end is. You have to have faith in that there's a plan for you. And when you hit that building, you either can run away from it or you go, no, this is part of the whole plan. This is not the easy part of the plan. But you have to trust in the plan, and you're going in a direction that's eventually going to lead you to something that has purpose again. And like I said, if I didn't hit that building, maybe I would be doing the same work, being stressed out and not being happy. And I wouldn't have gotten through that and still not having purpose. And the gift to me was giving me purpose of going like, you're going to use what you went through to help other people. And if I did not have faith in that, I wouldn't be where I am today. Yeah. So it's even.
Do you have any advice for people over 50 who are struggling with identifying a purpose for their life going forward or pursuing their passions?
Yeah. Well, it was thrust upon me in some ways to show me my purpose. If you don't hit the side of an airplane hangar, then there's other ways to find it. But I would say, really spend time thinking about, what you think, if you're looking for a purpose, of a greater purpose of what you think you're good at, what you think you can contribute. And, I would say like spending quiet time with yourself to really think through it. Right. I would say like just going for a walk does wonders for me as far as taking all these contraptions or social media, all these of TV, all these things out. And you just walking gives you incredible clarity. And it might not happen at once. It might take you a lot of different times, but it always jogs my brain to the thinking. So thinking about things you're passionate about, and you might not on day one be anywhere close to getting to where you think you can get. Maybe you don't have the skills yet to do what you want to do. But like I said, little by little, figure out what skills you need to get to where you want. Find people that are doing those things and try to get more information or knowledge from them to get to where you want to go. Because I would say, like, having purpose in life makes it a heck of a lot easier to wake up in the morning when you're just like, I have a purpose beyond myself. Because when you have purpose beyond yourself, you have strength beyond your own strength to get that done. Yeah, I think don't be scared that you're not on day one, because on day one, when I'm trying to figure out how to help people, I didn't know exactly what I was doing. You're like, you pick a direction and then go, okay, I'm going to learn things from this direction. Then it moves a little bit further over from where I thought it was going to be. Like, I never thought I was going to write a book, and that turned into writing a book. That because there was other ways that maybe I wasn't helping, because if you're helping someone else, you have to go to where they need help, not where you think they need help.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just that quiet time of assessing what you think you contribute, as far as like other passions and things like that. If you have a little fear, I always say go towards the fear. It's like that being uncomfortable is going to make you grow, overcoming that fear or uncertainty, or not being scared to go, I don't know anything about this. I don't know anybody else who knows anything about this. That's how I didn't know anybody who was a skydiver before I went skydiving. I didn't know anybody who did triathlon before I triathlon. Same thing with climbing. I didn't know anybody. So how do you get into it? You just little by little, you figure it out, and then things open up to you as you go. And I was like, I'd be in more regret if I didn't try something than if I did. This skydiving ended in a crash. Do I regret that? I regret putting my family through it, but in terms of myself, no.
You compiled all of your information and experiences, feelings, etc., into a book. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the book's called 8 Days Till Sunrise. So as I'm going through this journey of how do I help other people? How do I use this for good? And I started speaking at churches and things like that. And then I get finished with the talk, and then someone comes up to me afterwards, because people had said, you should write a book about this. But I was like, if it's a bit just about me, I'm not really interested in that. And so someone comes up to me after the service and says, my friend's going through opioid addiction, and I liked your message. Do you have anything I could give them? And at the time, this was like the third time I had ever spoken. And I was like, I don't. I'll go and visit them if you want, but they said they won't even open the door for you there. So I'm driving home, and I'm thinking the whole way home, I'm just like, maybe I could have helped that person if I had a book to give them at that point, because they could have read it at their own speed or whenever they wanted to. And I was like, I have to go towards what's going to help someone else out. So I go home and start writing the book. And the book is really, the whole point of it is to help other people going through that toughest time in their life, and sharing what helped me get through those things to help other people have that, go through that mindset, go through those lessons, and going like, this has helped me. I can't tell you exactly how to get through your toughest time, but I could say, this is what worked for me. And it's not about skydiving. It's not about athletic performance. It's all about these little lessons that, hey, I didn't expect to get hurt that day. And how are we going to get out of this? And how are we going to get back to where we need to be or want to be? And that's what the really book's about. It's about helping other people, not about how to skydive. Because I'm just like, it could have just as easily been a car accident, or someone passed away in your life, or you have cancer. I would say we all got to a place that we didn't wish we were in different ways, but how we get back from that is all the same.
Mm-hmm.
We use all the same skills, all the same mindset.
What's your book called, and where can people find it?
Yeah, 8 Days Till Sunrise is the name of the book. And you can get it on my website, jasondennen.com, DENEN.com, or you can get it at all those other places, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, all those websites, I'll have it as well.
Okay.
But yeah,
how can people connect with you if they'd like to get in touch with you?
Sure, you can go through my website and get in contact with me. I do a lot of speaking engagements. Of course, we have the book, so that's jasondennen.com. Also, Instagram, post a lot of things, talks I've done, and different things that are going on. And that's JWD Boulder, the city of Boulder, BOULDER. You can connect with me there. But yeah, the website, or just email me, jasondennenthehealer@gmail.com is another way to get in contact with me directly.
Super. Besides Instagram, are you involved in any other social media platforms?
Yeah, I'm at Facebook, LinkedIn. You can just search my name.
Super. Thank you very much for sharing your story today, Jason. It's quite a journey you were on, and very inspirational how you bounced back. A lot of people would have given up. So thank you for setting the example of you aren't done yet. There's God put you on this earth for another reason, and you're working to get that out, and that's to help other people through their own difficult times. So I applaud you for that effort and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
What a story Jason Dennen has to tell. It's amazing that he lived through an accident like that, let alone is thriving today. Prior to the accident, Jason was working 70 to 80 hours per week. After his brush with death, he has reprioritized his life so that he can be more involved and present in the lives of people he loves. The accident taught him what was truly the most important things in his life. Jason wrote a book about his experience, which is titled 8 Days Till Sunrise. In it, he recalls what it felt like to be in a coma and then to come out of it with a renewed appreciation for life itself. He had a lot of time to think when Jason was immobilized for months of rehabilitation. After he was told he would never run again, Jason set out to prove his doctors wrong. He started regaining his strength by running, bicycling, and swimming until he could complete a triathlon on the anniversary of the accident. Today, Jason finds purpose to his life by helping people realize how much purpose their own lives can have on the people around them. He shows people how strong they really are. By sharing his own doubts and insecurities with others, he found people opening up to him about their own insecurities and self-imposed limitations. Rather than feel sorry for himself and thinking his life was over, Jason intentionally found something small to do each day. Over time, he built stamina to embrace what he knew would be real challenges. The process he used to train his mind and body to race again can be applied to any big challenges people face. They are unable to do a lot on day one, but after months of taking little steps and gradually doing more, people find they can do things they never imagined. Awakening from the coma proved to Jason that God saved him for a reason. Therefore, he needed to embrace that purpose and carry out what he perceived to be his second chance mission. You can read Jason's full story in his book, 8 Days Till Sunrise, which is available on Amazon and in other bookstores. People can connect with Jason through his website at www.jasondennen.com, by email at jasondennenthehealer@gmail.com, or on Instagram and Facebook. That's all I have for this week's show. If you'd like help in identifying a purpose for your life or to get help planning your next steps, I'm offering a complimentary brainstorming session to members of the Forward from 50 Facebook community. For details, connect with me on Facebook or visit www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.